When my husband died, my son took over the family business, and my daughter-in-law demoted me to a bathroom cleaner. The day of the reading of the will, everyone was surprised by the final clause. The gold digger called me 27 times. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story to the very end and comment what city you are watching from. That way I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Margaret, and I am 66 years old. I never thought my life would change so drastically after burying the love of my life. Arthur had been my partner for 45 years, my equal in every sense of the word. Together we built not just a rock-solid marriage, but the most prosperous textile company in the state. When we closed our eyes together for the last time in that hospital room, me holding his hand as he slowly faded away, I believed that at the very least I would keep my family's respect and the place I had earned with blood and sweat in the company we built from nothing. How wrong I was. The shift started the very day of the funeral. While my eyes were still swollen from crying, Natalie, my 34-year-old daughter-in-law, approached me with a smile that completely bypassed her eyes. "Margaret," she told me using that saccharine voice she always pulled out when she wanted something. "Now that Derek is going to run the company, I think it would be best if you took a break. You've worked hard enough." In that moment, I didn't grasp what she was actually telling me. I thought she was worried about me, that maybe I just needed time to process my grief. Derek, my 38-year-old, my only son, stood right beside her, nodding without ever meeting my eyes. "Mom, Natalie is right. You should rest," he muttered, as if the words physically hurt his throat. "Rest?" I asked, entirely confused. "The company needs me now more than ever. I know every client, every contract, every—" "Mom," Derek cut me off this time with a harder edge. "Things are going to change. Natalie and I have already discussed the new direction of the company." That night, alone in the house I had shared with Arthur, I cried until I ran out of tears. Not only had I lost my husband, but I felt like I was losing my son, too. Yet nothing could have prepared me for what came next. A week later, when I arrived at the office, just like I had done for the last 30 years, I found my desk entirely empty. My belongings were shoved into a cardboard box by the door. Natalie was sitting in my chair, reviewing documents like she owned the place. "What is the meaning of this?" I asked, feeling the floor completely drop out from under my feet. Natalie looked up, flashing that ice-cold smile she had absolutely perfected. "Oh, Margaret, I'm so glad you're here. Derek and I have decided to restructure your position in the company." She took a dramatic pause, savoring every single second of my confusion. "You're going to help out with cleaning and maintenance. It's an important job, highly necessary." I stood there, paralyzed. Cleaning. "I am the vice president of this company. I helped found it when you were still in high school." "You were the vice president," she corrected me with a sickeningly fake sweetness. "Now Derek is the president, and I am the new vice president. You can contribute in other ways." Derek appeared in the doorway right at that moment. For a split second, our eyes met, and I saw something resembling guilt in his gaze, but it vanished just as quickly as it had surfaced. "Mom, it's just temporary, just until things stabilize." "Temporary," I repeated, feeling the sharp crack in my own voice. "Derek, this company exists because of the work your father and I put in. I signed the very first contracts. Mom, please don't make this harder than it already is," he interrupted, actively avoiding my eyes. "Natalie is right. It's better this way." Right then, the truth hit me. My son had made his choice, and he hadn't chosen me. Natalie got up from my chair and walked over to me. "Mary, the cleaning supervisor, is going to explain your new responsibilities. You're going to start with the bathrooms on the second floor." She stopped right in front of me, leaning in close enough so that only I could hear her next remark. "I hope you don't have a problem getting on your knees. You're going to be doing a lot of that." My hands visibly shook as I picked up the box holding my belongings. 30 years of my life, completely reduced to a few picture frames. A coffee mug that said, "Best Boss," gifted to me by the employees the year before, and a plant Arthur had given me the day we opened the office. As I walked toward the elevator, I could feel the heavy stares of the staff. Some looked utterly confused. Others just looked intensely uncomfortable. Rachel, my secretary of 15 years, rushed over to me with tears welling in her eyes. "Margaret, this isn't right. You can't." "It's fine, Rachel," I told her, even though my voice betrayed me. "Everything is going to be fine." but we both knew I was lying through my teeth. That afternoon, Mary handed me a navy blue uniform with the company logo embroidered on the chest. The exact same logo I had designed 20 years ago. "You start tomorrow at 6 a.m., she told me, unable to meet my gaze. The second-floor bathrooms need a deep clean. That night, I stayed awake until the early hours of the morning, just holding that uniform in my hands. In the suffocating silence of my empty house, I could hear Arthur's voice clear as day, as if he were sitting right there next to me. "Margaret, my love, you were always stronger than you ever believed." But in that moment, I didn't feel strong. I felt shattered, betrayed, entirely invisible. I had absolutely no idea that Arthur had set up something that was going to change everything. On my first day, I arrived at exactly 6 a.m., just like I had done for 30 years. Only this time, I was wearing that navy blue uniform that made me feel like an entirely different person. Mary was waiting for me at the employee entrance, not the main doors I had always walked through. That tiny shift hurt me far more than I anticipated. "Here is your cleaning cart," Mary said, actively avoiding looking me in the eye. I could read the pure discomfort written all over her face. She had worked under me for 10 years, and now she was the one handing down orders. "You start with the executive bathrooms on the second floor." The executive bathrooms. Ironically, the exact same floor where my office had been sitting just a week ago. As I pushed the cart down the hallways, I knew like the back of my hand. I watched how the employees reacted to my presence. Some darted their eyes away. Others whispered in hushed tones. Robert, the accountant I had personally hired 5 years back, slipped over to me when the coast was clear. "Margaret, this isn't right," he muttered, clearly on edge. "You shouldn't be doing this. I can talk to Derek and—" "No, Robert." I cut him off, gently touching his arm. "I don't want you getting into trouble. Just watch over the company for me, yes?" I saw the heavy tears forming in his eyes right before he quickly walked away. The first time I stepped into that executive bathroom to clean it, my hands shook so violently I could barely grip the supplies. I got down on my knees in front of the toilet, the very same one I had used as vice president, and I started scrubbing. In that precise moment, I felt something inside my chest permanently snap. It wasn't just the grueling physical labor, it was the raw humiliation. The agonizing reality of how my own flesh and blood had reduced me to this. Around 10 a.m., Natalie strolled into the bathroom like it was a total coincidence. I knew damn well it wasn't. She was wearing a breathtakingly expensive suit that I recognized instantly. It was from the exact boutique where I used to buy all my executive wear. "Oh, Margaret," she said, dripping with feigned surprise. "Look at you, working so hard. See how well that uniform fits you?" I stood up slowly, feeling the sharp protest in my knees. At 66, my body wasn't exactly built for kneeling on hard tile for hours on end. "Do you need something, Natalie?" "Just came to make sure everything is absolutely perfect for the board meeting this afternoon," she replied casually, admiring her flawless manicure. "We have some highly important clients coming in. Make sure there isn't a single smudge on those mirrors." She stepped closer and the scent of her overpriced perfume hit me. "You know, Margaret, I honestly think this job suits you much better than your old one. It's more age-appropriate." I felt the hot bile of rage rising in my throat, but I forced myself to swallow it down. "Understood." "Excellent." She smiled, a wicked gleam in her eyes. "Oh, and one more thing. When you see Derek or me in the halls, it would be best if you referred to us as Mr. Derek and Mrs. Natalie. You know, just to maintain a sense of professionalism." Those words gutted me like a hunting knife. My own son. The boy I had carried in my womb, the child I raised, the one I used to rock back to sleep when the nightmares came. Now he wanted me to treat him like a total stranger. After Natalie walked out, I stood alone in that bathroom, staring at my reflection in the mirror I had just wiped clean. The woman staring back at me had graying hair pulled back into a messy ponytail, wrinkles deeper than I remembered, and eyes that seemed totally drained of life. Where was the Margaret who called the shots? The woman who ran boardrooms, who commanded the absolute respect of clients and employees alike. On my lunch break, I headed down to the tiny janitorial closet to eat the sandwich I'd packed from home. But right before I got there, familiar voices drifted out from the main conference room. It was Derek talking to a group of executives. "My mother never truly understood the business," my son was saying, using a corporate tone I didn't even recognize. "She always relied on my father for the heavy lifting, Now that Natalie is heading up operations, we can finally drag this company into the modern era. I froze dead in the hallway. Did my son actually believe that garbage? Or was he just spinning lies to justify what he had done to me? "And she's on board with her new role?" asked a voice I immediately recognized as Mr. Foster, one of our oldest and most loyal clients. There was a heavy, calculated pause before Derek answered. "My mother really needed a change of pace after my father's passing. This keeps her active, but without the crushing pressure of executive duties." Lies. It was all a pack of lies. That afternoon, while I was scrubbing down the first-floor offices, Rachel cornered me when the coast was clear. "Margaret," she whispered, her voice laced with urgency, "you need to know what's happening. Natalie is completely rewriting all the contracts. She's firing people who have been here for decades. She says she needs new blood." My stomach dropped. The company Arthur and I had so carefully constructed, built on a foundation of respecting every worker, valuing loyalty and hard-earned experience, was being systematically dismantled. "Is there anything I can do?" I asked, though I already knew the grim answer. Rachel just shook her head, looking defeated. Derek blindly signs whatever she slides across his desk. It's like the man is under a spell. That night, when I finally dragged myself through my front door, every single bone in my body ached. My hands were raw and cracked from the harsh industrial chemicals. My knees screamed in protest with every step, and my heart was just a shattered mess on the floor. I collapsed into the living room chair, the exact spot where Arthur and I used to sit and map out the future of the company, where we popped champagne for every new contract, every milestone. "Arthur," I whispered into the empty air, "I don't know what to do. Our boy, our son, has completely erased me." In the dead silence of that house, the memory of my husband's final words came rushing back. "Margaret, promise me, you will never let anyone make you feel small. You are the strongest woman I have ever known." But sitting there all alone in my wrinkled cleaning uniform, I didn't feel strong. Not even a little. I felt like a ghost. Like the Margaret I had been for decades had just been wiped from the face of the earth. I had no idea that in less than a week, the tables were going to turn in a way no one saw coming. A week into my grueling new routine, while I was cleaning out what used to be Arthur's private office, I stumbled onto something that completely shifted my reality. Natalie had turned my late husband's sanctuary into a glorified storage closet, piling it high with boxes and dusty files she clearly didn't know what to do with. Digging through the absolute mess, wiping the thick layer of dust off a bookshelf, my fingers brushed against something incredibly familiar. It was our very first contract. The yellowed, frayed document that essentially birthed our company, dated 32 years ago. With trembling hands, I pulled it from a stack of forgotten manila folders and carefully unfolded the crisp edges. Right there, sitting boldly next to Arthur's signature, was mine. Herrera Textiles, it read across the top header, and right below it, in smaller print, founded by Arthur Herrera and Margaret Herrera. My name. My blood and sweat, my entire life. I sank right down onto the floor of that dusty office, and the memories just flooded in. I was 34 years old when Arthur and I took the leap. Derek was just a 6-year-old kid running laps around our cramped little house, while we sat at the kitchen table writing out business proposals by hand, because we couldn't even afford a damn typewriter. I was the one crunching the numbers. I was the one haggling with suppliers. I was the one staying up until 3 a.m. calculating overhead costs and profit margins. "Margaret, none of this works without you," Arthur used to tell me, watching me audit the ledgers for the 10th time to ensure every penny was accounted for. "You're the brains behind the whole operation." I kept digging through the piles of paper, unearthing document after document that validated my history. There was the winning pitch I had written for our second major client, Mrs. Vance, which locked in a massive 5-year deal. My handwriting, my ideas, my strategy. I also found the official minutes from our first board meetings, heavily featuring my name as co-founder and vice president. Those records clearly outlined my moves. It was my idea to branch out into commercial hotel linens. It was my proposal for the employee incentive program that bought us decades of fierce, unwavering loyalty. But what truly broke me was finding a thick folder stuffed with thank you letters from clients. Every single one of them addressed directly to me. "Margaret, your attention to detail is simply unmatched. Thank you, Margaret, for handling our crisis with such incredible efficiency. This company is damn lucky to have a mind like yours." I had built rock-solid bridges with every major player we worked with. I knew their wives' preferences, their kids' names, their exact birthdays. That personal touch was the glue that held those long-term contracts together, the ones our competitors could never steal away. "What exactly are you doing in here?" Natalie's voice snapped me out of it. She was standing in the doorway, arms firmly crossed, looking down at me with that signature, perfectly rehearsed look of absolute superiority. "I'm cleaning," I replied instinctively, trying to slide the documents behind my back. "Exactly like I was told." She stepped closer, catching a glimpse of the papers. "What is that?" "Just some old company files," I said, feeling my voice lose its edge. Natalie held out her hand, palm up. "Hand them over. I'm the one who decides what we keep and what goes straight to the shredder." For the first time in weeks, a spark of pure rebellion flared up in my chest. "These documents are the very foundation of this company. You can't just toss them out." Her eyes instantly went cold. "I can do whatever the hell I want, Margaret. This is my company now." "Our company," I corrected her, honestly shocking myself with my own nerve. "I helped build it." Natalie let out a cruel, sharp laugh. "Your company, please. You were just the boss's wife playing dress-up. Arthur just let you tag along to keep you occupied." Those words hit me like a closed fist. But this time, I was literally holding the hard proof. These files definitively prove my role here. My signature is right there on the Articles of Incorporation. My business proposals. "Ancient history means absolutely nothing," she snapped, ripping the papers right out of my grip. "The only thing that matters is the here and now, and right now, you scrub toilets." She saw the sheer devastation on my face, and her smile turned downright venomous. "You know what, Margaret? I think you need a harsh reminder of your place in the food chain. Tomorrow, you're going to deep clean the entire building, solo. Mary is taking a personal day." "The entire building is physically impossible for one person," I protested. "Then you'd better clock in early," she shot back, strutting out of the office with my life's work tucked neatly under her arm. I got home that night running on absolute fumes, but a new kind of fire was burning in my gut. If Natalie honestly thought she could just erase my legacy, she had severely miscalculated. I knew exactly where Arthur kept the hard copies of the real paperwork. In our home study, tucked right behind a framed photo from our wedding day, sat a small wall safe that only Arthur and I knew existed. With trembling fingers, I punched in the combination Derek's birthday. Inside, I found the Holy Grail, the duplicate copies of everything. The original corporate charter, the heavyweight contracts, the board minutes proving my calls had saved this company from bankruptcy on multiple occasions. But what completely stopped my heart was a sealed envelope with my name scribbled across the front in Arthur's unmistakable handwriting. I sliced it open carefully and pulled out a letter dated just 2 weeks before he took his last breath. "My dearest Margaret," it started. "If you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you, and things have likely gone completely off the rails. I know our boy. I love him deeply, but I also know he has a weak spine. And I know Natalie far better than she thinks I do." My pulse started hammering against my ribs as my eyes darted across the page. I have watched her manipulate him, planting toxic little seeds in his head about the future of this company. I know Derek lacks the grit to stand up to her, and I am terrified of what they might do to you when I'm not around to act as a shield. Hot tears started streaming down my face. Arthur knew. He saw the rot I refused to acknowledge. That is exactly why I've set up a failsafe, my love. Embedded in my will is a highly specific clause that only Attorney Miller and I know about. A trigger clause that activates the very second my family treats you with anything less than the absolute respect and dignity you have earned. My hands shook violently as I read the final lines. "Trust me, Margaret. Trust that I would never leave you out in the cold. Your husband who loves you endlessly, Arthur." For the first time in a brutal month, a genuine smile broke across my face. My husband, even from 6 feet under, was still fiercely protecting me. I walked into work the next morning with an entirely different aura. Yes, I was still strapped into that humiliating navy blue uniform. Yes, I was still pushing a mop bucket. But now I was holding a royal flush that Natalie couldn't even fathom. Hope. As I buffed the lobby floors, I watched Natalie lead a pitch meeting with potential buyers. I listened to her make reckless promises she knew damn well our supply chain couldn't support, slashing margins irresponsibly just to get ink on paper. She was systematically burning down the empire Arthur and I had bled for. Not for much longer, I muttered to myself, wringing out the dirty mop water. Robert, our lead accountant, slid over to me when the lobby cleared out. Margaret, do you have any idea when the official reading of the will is happening? My heart skipped a beat. Why do you ask? Because Mr. Miller called me yesterday. He said there are massive legal documents that need to be unsealed in front of the entire family. Apparently, Mr. Herrera left behind some incredibly specific instructions. I smirked, feeling the weight of that letter in my memory. It's going to be soon, Robert. Very soon. I had no idea that day was rushing toward us in less than 72 hours, and it was about to rewrite reality. The call hit on a Tuesday morning while I was literally on my hands and knees scrubbing the reception tiles. Rachel rushed over with a cordless phone, looking incredibly tense. Margaret, it's Attorney Miller. He says it's an absolute emergency. I grabbed the receiver with hands still slick from the bleach. Mr. Miller, Margaret, I need you in my office this Friday, 3 p.m. sharp. It's for the official execution of Arthur's will. Derek and Natalie will be there as well. My pulse kicked into high gear. Official reading, I thought they had already combed through everything. There are deeply buried clauses that, per Arthur's strict legal instructions, could only be unsealed exactly 30 days post-mortem. It is vital that you are in this room, Margaret. Beyond vital. His grim tone told me he was holding all the cards. I'll be there, Mr. Miller. The next 3 days dragged by like molasses. Natalie strutted around more insufferable than ever, loudly bragging to anyone who would listen about how she was going to gut the company's outdated framework and purge the dead weight. Derek, meanwhile, completely dodged my eyeline, acting like looking at me would physically burn his retinas. Friday rolled around and I arrived early at Mr. Miller's downtown firm. It was an intimidating, high-end building where Arthur and I had inked countless massive deals over the decades. I sat quietly in the waiting room, still wearing my damn janitor's uniform, because Natalie had spitefully ordered me to scrub the baseboards in her office until the very last second. Derek and Natalie walked through the glass doors at 3 p.m. on the dot. She was draped in a sleek black designer dress and heels that easily cost double my monthly cleaning wages. Derek was tightly wound in his sharpest custom suit, the exact one he wore to bury his father. Mom? Derek muttered with a stiff, icy nod, refusing to make eye contact. Natalie didn't even bother acknowledging my existence. She took a seat on the farthest couch and aggressively scrolled through her phone like she was too important to be breathing the same air. Mr. Miller finally ushered us into his expansive corner office. He was a sharp guy, in his late 60s, a shark of a lawyer who had run with Arthur since their college days. He stared us down with a heavy, impenetrable expression. Before we dive in, he started squaring a thick stack of legal briefs on his mahogany desk. I need everyone in this room to understand that what you are about to hear are Arthur's uncompromising, ironclad instructions. He was surgically specific about exactly how and when the layers of this document were to be executed. Natalie leaned forward, flashing a greedy smile she couldn't quite mask. Of course, Mr. Miller. We are fully prepared to proceed. Mr. Miller kicked things off by reading the baseline terms we already knew. The company was handed over to Derek. The sprawling family estate went to him as well. The liquid assets and bank accounts were split between Derek and a handful of charities. I had heard this brutal breakdown a month ago, and every syllable still felt like taking a bullet to the chest. However, Mr. Miller continued, his voice suddenly dropping an octave, turning ice cold. Arthur embedded a highly unorthodox contingency in his will, a trigger mechanism he officially titled the Family Preservation Clause. Natalie's perfectly plucked eyebrows pulled together. What kind of clause? Mr. Miller locked eyes with me for a long second before answering. Arthur legally mandated that if his wife Margaret was treated in a disrespectful, humiliating, or undignified manner by any member of this family following his death, his entire estate would immediately and irrevocably revert directly to her. The silence that sucked the air out of that room was so absolute, I could hear the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Derek turned the color of ash. Natalie opened her mouth, but her vocal cords completely failed her. What exactly does that mean? Derek stammered out. It means, Mr. Miller pressed on with lethal calm, that Arthur retained my firm to covertly monitor the exact treatment Margaret received after his passing, and I am thoroughly disgusted to report that the behavior I have tracked is beyond reprehensible. Natalie finally found her voice, shrill and panicky. That is an absurd lie. Margaret has been treated perfectly. We even kept her on the payroll. Mr. Miller flipped open a massive black binder. Payroll. Are you referring to stripping a co-founder of her title, forcing her into a janitor's uniform, and making a 66-year-old woman scrub urinals on her hands and knees? My heart was pounding so violently against my ribs, I was terrified the whole room could hear it. How could you possibly know all that? Derek choked out. Arthur instructed me to establish back channels with the most fiercely loyal veteran staff. Robert, Rachel, Mary. They have been feeding me daily intelligence reports on your mother's agonizing situation. Derek shot up out of his leather chair. This can't be legal. You planted corporate spies in my building. They aren't spies. Mr. Miller corrected him without blinking. They are deeply loyal employees who actually respect Arthur's legacy and were profoundly sickened by the abuse of his widow. Natalie jumped up too, her face flushed dark red with pure rage. This is a setup, a total conspiracy. You're fabricating this whole narrative. Mr. Miller didn't flinch. He just opened a second folder and started tossing high-res, glossy photos across the polished wood. My breath hitched when I saw them. Crystal clear security footage stills. Me deep cleaning toilets. Me kneeling on hard tile scrubbing grout. Me dragging that massive, humiliating trash cart down the executive hallways. These stills were pulled directly from your own corporate security feeds, Mr. Miller stated coldly. Arthur specifically mandated that I legally subpoena the surveillance logs on a weekly basis. Natalie looked like a rat backed into a corner. She took that position voluntarily. Nobody put a gun to her head. Voluntarily. I echoed my voice, cutting through the room for the very first time since the bloodbath started. You told me it was a temporary measure. You told me it was the only option left on the table. Furthermore, Mr. Miller bulldozed right over her. I have sworn affidavits and audio transcripts of Natalie explicitly degrading Margaret, taunting her about her age, mocking her for being on her knees, and telling her the humiliation was age-appropriate. Natalie whipped around to face me, venom in her eyes. You've been wearing a wire. No, I answered smoothly. But apparently other people were. Mr. Miller nodded. The staff is thoroughly disgusted by your reign of terror. Several key employees have been meticulously documenting your abuse on their own initiative. Derek looked like he had just been hit by a freight train. He collapsed back into his chair, burying his face in his trembling hands. This can't be happening. This isn't real. I'm afraid it is very real, Derek. Mr. Miller said, a heavy dose of pity in his voice. Your father knew exactly what kind of man you were. He anticipated this exact catastrophic failure of character. That is why he built this ironclad firewall into his trust. What exactly does the entire estate reverts to her mean? Natalie asked, her voice shaking violently. It means the textile corporation, the family estate, the offshore accounts, the real estate portfolio. Every single dime and asset legally transfers to Margaret, effective immediately. That is utterly impossible, Natalie shrieked. She can't just strip us of everything. I am not stripping you of anything, I said with a chilling calm that honestly surprised me. You stripped yourselves. Derek finally lifted his head to look at me. Truly look at me for the first time in a month. Mom, please, we can fix this. I can restructure the company. I can undo it. For a split second, I saw the terrified little boy he used to be, desperately begging his mother for forgiveness. But then the brutal flashbacks hit me. The weeks of soul-crushing humiliation, his wife's venomous taunts, his absolute cowardly silence. Fix what, Derek? I asked softly. The undeniable fact that you sat back and watched your wife treat me like human garbage, or the fact that you didn't step up to defend me a single time. Natalie slammed her hands down on Mr. Miller's desk, pure panic in her eyes. There has to be a loophole, a legal injunction, an appeals process. No. This trust is bulletproof and drafted with lethal precision, Mr. Miller fired back. Arthur fully anticipated a hostile legal challenge from you, so he made absolutely certain this contract was legally untouchable. He turned his attention back to me, his sharp features softening. Margaret, do you officially accept the inheritance under the exact terms triggered by your late husband? I looked at Derek one last time. His eyes were silently screaming for mercy, but the bridge was already burned to ash. Yes, I said, my voice steady as a rock. I accept. Mr. Miller cracked his first genuine smile of the afternoon. Then congratulations, Margaret. You are the sole legal owner of Herrera Textiles." Natalie let out a guttural, almost animalistic gasp of horror. Derek just stared blankly at the wall, his brain completely short-circuiting as the reality of his ruin set in. For the first time in 30 grueling days, I unzipped that suffocating navy blue uniform right there in the office. I took it off, folded it neatly over the back of the leather chair, and left it. I wouldn't be needing it anymore. When we walked out of Mr. Miller's firm, the silence was deafening. Derek and Natalie shuffled toward their luxury SUV like the walking dead. I just stood there on the downtown pavement, letting the cool air hit my face, processing the absolute whiplash of the last hour. After a solid month of being stepped on, of destroying my knees on bathroom floors, of being treated like a ghost, I was suddenly holding the keys to the kingdom. But the wildest part? I didn't feel that rush of explosive triumph I thought I would. All I felt was a crushing, hollow sadness for the irreversible damage my family had inflicted upon themselves. I went back to the house and sank into the heavy armchair where Arthur used to read the Sunday paper. "Thank you, my love," I whispered into the quiet room. You knew exactly how the dominoes would fall. The house phone started ringing off the hook at 6 p.m. Caller ID said Natalie. I let it ring. It rang again. And again. And again. By 10 p.m., she had desperately tried to reach me 27 times. 27. I counted every single one. On the 28th ring, I finally picked up. Her voice was frantic, completely shattered. "Margaret, please, we desperately need to talk." "Oh, now you want to have a conversation?" I asked, completely unfazed. "Where was this professional courtesy when you were handing me a toilet brush?" We made some massive miscalculations," she stammered. "But we can negotiate. You can keep exactly 50% of everything. Just please don't rip the company away from us." 50%, I repeated, almost laughing out loud. "Natalie, the corporation is mine. The estate is mine. It is all mine. This is the bed you made, and now you're going to lie in it." "You can't do this to us," her voice pitched into pure hysteria. "Derek is your blood. I am your daughter-in-law. We are family. Family." The word tasted like ash in my mouth, loaded with years of repressed grief. "You treated me like family when you forced me into that sweat-stained uniform. Derek treated me like family when he stood by and let you publicly humiliate his own mother." There was a long, static-filled silence on the line before she spoke again, her tone suddenly shifting back to that cold, calculating snake I knew so well. "You know what? I don't care what you say. Derek isn't going to roll over. He will drag you through court for what is rightfully his." "Then tell him to gear up," I replied, cold as ice. "The legal groundwork is flawless. Arthur made damn sure of it." I hung up and ripped the phone cord right out of the wall jack. I needed absolute silence to strategize my next move. The next morning, I pulled into the corporate lot at 8 a.m. sharp. But this time, I didn't skulk through the service entrance. I walked straight through the massive glass double doors of the main lobby, holding a heavy leather briefcase packed with the notarized transfer of ownership. Rachel nearly dropped her coffee mug when she saw me strutting in. "Margaret, what on earth is happening?" "Call an all-hands company meeting for 10 a.m., I ordered, my voice ringing with total authority. "And do me a favor, tell Mary I'm officially retiring the uniform." Derek and Natalie were already upstairs. When I pushed open the heavy oak doors to what used to be Arthur's executive suite, I found them frantically shredding documents and aggressively digging through files. "Morning," I announced from the doorway. Derek's head snapped up. His eyes were bloodshot, completely void of sleep. "Mom, please, can we just sit down and handle this like adults?" "You're absolutely right," I nodded. "Like adults. So I'm going to clearly outline exactly how this is going to go down." I walked past them and sat down in Arthur's massive leather chair, the exact throne where I had quietly dictated the future of this company for 3 decades. God, it felt good to be back. "Natalie," I started locking onto her terrified eyes. "You are officially terminated. You have until the end of the business day to pack up your desk and surrender any corporate property, keycards, and company vehicles." All the blood drained from her face. "You cannot fire me. I am the only one who knows how this new infrastructure works. This company needs me to survive." "This company ran like a well-oiled machine for 30 years before you ever set foot in the lobby," I fired back, cool and collected. We'll survive without you. This is a personal vendetta, she screamed. You're firing me out of pure spite. I am firing you because in the mere 30 days you've been playing executive, you have hemorrhaged 3 of our largest accounts. You've signed off on deliverables our supply chain cannot legally fulfill, and you have cultivated a deeply toxic corporate culture. I pulled a thick dossier out of my briefcase and slammed it on the desk. It is all heavily documented right here, courtesy of Robert and an incredibly loyal staff. Natalie's jaw practically hit the floor. I pivoted my gaze over to my son. As for you, Derek, you can stay on the payroll, but as an at-will employee, not an owner, you are being demoted back to the exact role you held before your father passed, operations manager. Mom, I am your son. His voice cracked, tears finally spilling over. You can't treat me like some random hire off the street. You treated me like a stray dog when I needed you the absolute most, I replied, feeling the last shred of maternal warmth in my chest freeze over. You let your wife humiliate me. You sat in your air-conditioned office while I scrubbed feces off the bathroom tiles. You didn't stand up for me, not once. I thought it was just temporary, he mumbled pathetically. You thought it was significantly easier to let her abuse me than to actually grow a spine and stand up to her. I cut him off dead in his tracks. That was the choice you made, Derek. Now I am making mine. Natalie violently pushed her chair back and stood up. This isn't over. We are going to contest the will. We will rip you apart in probate court and prove this was an illegal seizure. Bring it on, I said, leaning back in the chair. Attorney Miller already warned me you'd try to pull that thread. He also assured me that Arthur anticipated your greed and fortified the trust so heavily that it is legally bulletproof. This is a living nightmare, Natalie shrieked before turning on her heel and storming out of the suite, slamming the heavy oak doors behind her. Derek just sat there staring at me like I was a total stranger who had broken into his house. What happened to my mother? He whispered. Your mother died the exact day you stood by and let them strip me of my dignity, I answered with brutal, unapologetic honesty. The woman sitting across from you right now is someone who finally learned how to bite back. At 10 a.m. sharp, the entire staff was tightly packed into the main conference hall. I could see the heavy confusion painted on their faces, but I could also see a flicker of desperate hope in the eyes of the people who had quietly supported me during my month in hell. As some of you may have already heard, I started my voice projecting clearly across the massive room. There is a massive restructuring happening within this corporation, effective immediately. I am officially taking over as the president and sole owner of Herrera Textiles. A loud wave of shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. I know it has been a brutal, chaotic 30 days for everyone, I pressed on. I know many of you were forced to witness situations that never, ever should have occurred within these walls. I want to make one thing absolutely clear. That era is dead and buried. Robert, standing in the back, started a slow clap. Gradually, one by one, the rest of the room joined in. It wasn't some deafening, cinematic roar of applause, but it was deeply, incredibly genuine. Natalie Vance is no longer employed at this company, I announced, letting the words hang in the air. Her tenure ends today. Derek will continue as operations manager. But from this moment forward, he answers directly to me. Listening to Margaret's journey evokes a profound mix of heartbreak and ultimate triumph, reminding us all of the enduring power of resilience and human dignity. This story serves as a powerful mirror, reflecting how quickly greed and arrogance can dismantle familial bonds and moral compasses. Yet it also brilliantly highlights that true worth cannot be erased by a demotion or a change of clothes. The most vital lesson we can extract and weave into the fabric of our daily lives is the absolute necessity of respecting those who laid the foundations upon which we currently stand. In our modern pursuit of success and corporate advancement, it is dangerously easy to dismiss the wisdom and silent strength of the older generation, mistaking their quietness for weakness. However, Margaret's silent endurance while scrubbing floors speaks volumes about true leadership, which is rooted in character rather than a fancy title. We must actively apply this by cultivating deep empathy and unwavering respect for every individual we encounter, regardless of their social standing or job description. When we treat the janitor with the exact same level of reverence as the CEO, we elevate our own humanity and foster an environment where loyalty and trust can thrive. Furthermore, this narrative teaches us to stand fiercely in our own truth and to recognize our inherent value, even when those closest to us attempt to diminish it. By honoring the sacrifices of our elders, maintaining our integrity in the face of humiliation, and standing up against unjust treatment, we not only protect our own spirit, but also inspire others to live with greater courage, ultimately creating a more compassionate and grounded society for everyone. Please remember that the story shared today is a creative narrative designed strictly for educational and motivational purposes. From my perspective, Margaret's ordeal is a haunting reminder that true character is revealed not when we are at the top, but how we treat others when we hold the power. It breaks my heart to see how quickly a son could abandon his mother to appease a toxic partner. Yet there is immense beauty in Arthur's undying devotion, proving that real love fiercely protects its own, even from beyond the grave. I believe that humility is the most valuable currency a human being can possess, and arrogance is always the prelude to a devastating fall. Natalie's cruel treatment of a grieving widow reflects a deep spiritual poverty that no designer suit could ever cover up. We live in a world that often worships youth and aggressive ambition, casually throwing away the profound wisdom of our elders. This narrative challenges me to look closely at my own relationships and ask if I am truly honoring the people who sacrificed for my well-being. Every time Margaret knelt on those hard tiles, she wasn't losing her dignity. She was silently gathering the undeniable strength needed to reclaim her legacy. I see this as a universal law of life. Whatever energy you put out into the world, whether it is vicious cruelty or patient resilience, will inevitably return to you amplified. Derek's cowardly silence was a profound betrayal, teaching us that failing to speak up against injustice is just as destructive as committing the act itself. True leadership requires profound empathy, a quality that cannot be bought or inherited, but must be cultivated through lived experience and genuine human connection. We must strive to build families and communities rooted in unwavering mutual respect, rather than conditional corporate alliances. Margaret's ultimate victory was not just about regaining her financial empire, but about drawing an unbreakable boundary that protected her soul. I sincerely hope this story inspires all of us to look at our aging parents and colleagues with renewed gratitude and deep appreciation. Ultimately, life's greatest triumphs are achieved not through malicious manipulation, but through maintaining our moral compass even in our darkest hours. Disclaimer of liability. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this commentary are personal reflections and do not constitute professional psychological, legal, or financial advice. The preceding story is a dramatized scenario intended to spark moral reflection and inspire positive values. Any resemblance to actual persons living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. Listeners are encouraged to use their own judgment and seek appropriate professional guidance when dealing with real-life family, legal, or business conflicts.